I think was probably the most complete pitcher of my time. He could throw fastballs in and out, two-seamers, four-seamers. He had a great curveball. He even had a screwball, and he had perfect control.
Few pitchers dominated the mound the way Bob Gibson did. Fierce, intimidating, and respected, Gibson wasn't just a legend, he was a competitor who earned the admiration of fans and players alike. But who had earned his admiration? Bob Gibson opened up and revealed something rare, his own list of favorites. Yes, Bob Gibson named his 6 favorite baseball players, the few men whose talent and grit truly impressed him. At number 6 is Juan Marichal, the Dominican dandy, a pitcher whose artistry and command won the rare and wholehearted praise of Bob Gibson. Gibson wasn't the kind of guy to dish out compliments, but with Juan Marichal, he broke his own rule. He flat out called him the best pitcher in the league, and even told writer Roger Angell that Marichal had so many different kinds of good pitches to throw at you. When Gibson said that, it meant something. He judged pitchers by toughness, not style points. So if he called you the best, it was nothing but respect. Marichal had every pitch in the book, fastballs inside and out, both the two-seamer and four-seamer, a sharp curve, and even a screwball that could throw hitters off balance. But what really made him special was his control. He could put the ball anywhere he wanted, changing speeds and angles to keep hitters off balance. That mix of variety, precision, and deception made Marichal one of the toughest pitchers of the 1960s. Their head-to-head battles were about more than the score. On August 16, 1960, they faced each other for the first time. 22-year-old Juan Marichal outpitched 24-year-old Bob Gibson in a 7-3 Giants win. After the game, Gibson admitted, "I just couldn't get anything over at first." But the rivalry was just getting started. On paper, Gibson had the edge, winning 4 of their 7 duels. But the stats don't capture how fierce the rivalry really was. Both men raised their level when facing each other. In the 1960s, Marichal won 191 games, while Gibson recorded 164. The late 1960s marked the peak for both. In 1968, Gibson produced his legendary 1.12 ERA and won the Cy Young, while Marichal quietly notched 26 wins, a 2.43 ERA, and led the National League with 30 complete games. The rivalry had rough patches off the field as well. The 1965 Johnny Roseboro incident damaged Marichal's reputation and complicated his early Hall of Fame candidacy. When Marichal wasn't elected on his first 2 Hall of Fame ballots, Gibson spoke up in his defense. Gibson made it clear that he judged Marichal by his performance, not by controversy. Their styles couldn't have been more different, and that's what made the matchup so compelling. Marichal's high leg kick, smooth delivery, and calm presence on the mound almost looked like a dance. Gibson, on the other hand, attacked hitters with raw power, his delivery like a machine firing one bullet after another. That rare blend of grace, stamina, and fire is exactly why Bob Gibson held Juan Marichal in the highest regard as one of the very best he ever faced. At number 5 is Stan Musial, a legend Gibson admired less for his numbers and more for his character. Gibson once put it simply, "Stan Musial is the nicest man I ever met in baseball." And to be honest, I can't relate to that. I never knew that nice and baseball went together. That line says it all. For Gibson, Musial's greatness wasn't just in the swing of his bat, it was in the way he treated people. Stan Musial's legacy was built on far more than numbers. Yes, he accumulated 3,630 hits and a lifetime 331 average. But what truly defined him was decency, humility, and respect. He stopped to sign autographs for kids, chatted with fans like old friends, and treated opponents with genuine kindness. He never carried himself like the superstar he was, and that's what struck Bob Gibson, a man defined by fire and intensity. He admired how Musial could be both humble and unstoppable. Gibson himself once said, "You could learn something from Stan Musial on how to be a man, whether you were a baseball player or not." Their years as teammates from 1959 to 1963 cemented that respect. Gibson saw Musial not only as the heart of the Cardinals, but also as a model of how to carry oneself under the spotlight. Musial played 22 seasons and never got ejected from a single game. Even after Musial retired, he kept making an impact on Gibson. Gibson always remembered the lesson Stan taught him. You can be great and still be kind to people. You can play hard, win games, and still treat everyone with respect. At number 4 is Curt Flood. Gibson saw him as more than just a teammate. He saw him as a man with real courage, strong character, and solid principles. Curt Flood and Bob Gibson played together on the Cardinals in the 1960s, and their bond went far beyond the clubhouse. In his book Stranger to the Game, Gibson called Flood his best friend in baseball. He wrote, "To me, he personified what the Cardinals were all about. As a man and teammate, he was smart, funny, sensitive, and most of all, unique. As a ball player, he was resourceful, dedicated, and very, very good." Their friendship started back in the minors, when baseball was still divided by racial barriers. But instead of driving them apart, it pulled them closer. For more than a decade, they shared the road as roommates. Gibson said they became so close that they could understand each other without even saying a word. For Gibson, Flood's greatness went far beyond their friendship. Flood became one of the game's most reliable center fielders in the 1960 seconds. He won 7 straight Gold Gloves, made 3 All-Star teams, and helped the Cardinals win the World Series in 1964 and 1967. He also set a record with 568 chances without an error, playing 223 games flawlessly in the field. Gibson, Flood, and Bill White helped make the Cardinals one of the tightest, most unified teams of the 1960 seconds. They became the model for what integration in baseball could be. Gibson said that team had almost no racial tension, and in those days, that was huge. In 1969, Curt Flood did something nobody had ever done before. When baseball tried to trade him to the Phillies, he said no. He sued baseball over something called the reserve clause, basically a rule that let teams control players like they owned them. It cost him everything. Flood had to sit out the entire 1970 season and got death threats every single day. Even his best friend Bob Gibson played it safe. Gibson later admitted, "Did I support Curt? Yes, but I kept my distance, just in case things went south." That distance hurt Flood deeply. He felt abandoned by other players, later saying, "We lost because my guys, my colleagues, didn't stand up with me. The cost was crushing." Flood even left the country, moving all the way to Copenhagen. He'd write Gibson these long, deep letters from overseas. Gibson later said, "I'd get these long letters from him every now and then. I really missed him." Gibson often spoke about Flood's sacrifice. He said every major league player should give 1% of their paycheck to Flood because they owed him that much and more. In Gibson's eyes, today's players were living well because of Flood's stand, but had given him little thanks in return. The friendship between Gibson and Flood was bigger than baseball. It was built on respect, shared struggles as black athletes in a segregated era, and a relentless drive for excellence. Their friendship showed the best of what the Cardinals were in the 1960 seconds, a team that was known for working together and winning. At number 3, we have Lou Brock, a player who held a special place in Bob Gibson's heart. Gibson loved everything about Brock, his game on the field, and who he was as a person. When Brock showed up in St. Louis in that famous 1964 trade, Gibson honestly had no clue what they were getting. Years later, he admitted, "I didn't know how good Lou would be. Nobody knew. When I heard about the trade, I thought, for who? How could you trade Broglio for that guy?" Gibson wasn't alone. Sports writers blasted this deal, calling it highway robbery for the Cubs. The Cardinals had traded pitcher Ernie Broglio for a hitter batting just 251. It looked disastrous. Brock had other plans. That same season, he silenced every critic. He hit 348 and stole 33 bases for St. Louis, bringing speed and energy the lineup desperately needed. His confidence transformed what the Cardinals were about and pushed them to the 1964 World Series championship over the Yankees. Gibson's respect for Brock grew from those early doubts. He remembered the whispers when Brock joined the team. "How's a 250 hitter going to help this club?" Brock heard those whispers too and used them as fuel. Brock said, "I looked at their faces and saw it, and it gave me the initiative, the boost I needed to prove them wrong." Gibson credited Brock with transforming how this team played baseball. Gibson brought intensity on the mound. Brock created chaos on the base paths with his speed and fearless play. Together, they became the heart of a Cardinals dynasty that captured 3 pennants and 2 World Series titles in the 1960 seconds. In the World Series, Brock was unstoppable. In 21 games, he hit 391 and stole 14 bases, tying the all-time record. He stole 7 bases in both the 67 and 68 series. Those marks still stand. He remains the only player to steal 3 bases in a World Series game twice. Gibson admired Brock because pressure never broke him. The bigger the stage, the sharper he performed. That respect went both ways. Brock once said, "When Bob Gibson pitched, we believed we would win every time." Their bond went deeper than baseball. Around 2000, Brock received devastating news. Doctors diagnosed him with type 2 diabetes. A severe infection forced amputation of his left leg below the knee. For a man whose career was built on speed, this was devastating. Gibson visited Brock during his recovery. When Brock returned in 2016 to throw out the ceremonial first pitch, his first public appearance since the amputation, Gibson stood beside him, steadying and supporting him. Years later, Gibson remained emphatic. "Without Lou, we couldn't have won it. Period." That wasn't a casual compliment. Gibson acknowledged that Brock lit the fire that powered a championship era. For Gibson, Lou Brock wasn't just a teammate, he was family. He set the standard for younger players and faced every obstacle with grace and determination. At number 2 is Ernie Banks. Bob Gibson admired him more than most people realized. Gibson had a tough, even scary reputation on the mound, but when he talked about Banks, you could hear a softer side, a respect he rarely showed. Despite years of battling on the field, Gibson consistently praised Banks as both a player and a person. The admiration was genuine, rooted not only in their head-to-head duels, but also in their shared experience as black athletes during the civil rights era. They knew what it was like to carry the pressure of breaking barriers in a game that was still struggling with racial integration. In a 2015 interview with Redbird Rants, Gibson made his feelings clear. "I'd never speak against Ernie Banks. He was a great guy and a great player, and I was always desperate to get some more punch in our lineup." For a competitor as blunt as Gibson, that was no casual compliment. Their bond came with plenty of competition too. Banks, Mr. Cub, was all smiles and energy, a sharp contrast to Gibson's fierce fire on the mound. In his memoir Stranger to the Game, Gibson told a story about Banks coming up to him during batting practice and saying, "Hoot, you pitching tomorrow? We're gonna beat you." Gibson didn't take that lightly. The very next day, July 18, 1962, he drilled Banks in the ribs to send a message. In that same game, Gibson struck him out 3 times and gave up only 3 hits in a 2-1 Cardinals win. Instead of creating bad blood, that moment actually led to more respect between the two. They understood each other better after that battle. What makes Gibson's admiration striking is how different it was from his reputation. Gibson was feared across the league for pitching inside without hesitation, and rivals often joked he hated everyone. Yet, when speaking about Banks, Gibson's tone softened, showing genuine warmth and respect. Banks' teammates saw it too. Billy Williams said Banks would joke around with Gibson, even when the rest of the Cubs warned, "Don't mess with Bob Gibson." But Gibson respected it. He admired Banks for staying upbeat, steady, and strong when it mattered most. The respect was mutual. Banks once described Gibson as one of the finest athletes and human beings I've ever met. He instills the competitive drive in others. His overall approach is to win. Coming from Mr. Cub, those words carried weight, showing how 2 very different personalities could admire each other's qualities. Their friendship meant more than just baseball stats. In the 1960s, both guys were breaking new ground for black players. They were showing everyone what was possible. Gibson praising Banks in public was a big deal. The Cubs and Cardinals hated each other, but Gibson didn't care about that rivalry when it came to giving Banks credit. That showed real class. Even after they both retired, Gibson never stopped respecting Banks. He always remembered him as a tough opponent and a class act. Their respect for each other started on the field but grew into something bigger. They shared experiences that went way beyond baseball. At number 1 is Ozzie Smith, the player who earned Bob Gibson's highest respect. Gibson admired Smith for 3 key reasons: his exceptional defense, his quiet competitive fire, and his refusal to settle for anything less than perfection. These qualities matched exactly what Gibson valued most in a player. When Smith arrived in St. Louis in 1982, he immediately felt intimidated by Gibson's legendary reputation. Smith later admitted, "Meeting someone you've admired from afar is always intimidating, especially a legend like Bob Gibson." But that initial nervousness quickly gave way to mutual respect that brought them together. Their shared drive for excellence created an instant bond. Their friendship grew through constant teasing and banter. They exchanged jokes like friendly sparring partners, proof of their mutual respect. Gibson would tease, and Smith would respond in kind. These private moments revealed the depth of their friendship. Their back and forth was legendary. Gibson once joked, "If I was a shortstop, nobody would even know who you are." Smith shot back with a grin, "If you'd hit me, I'd have taken my bat and hit you right in your kneecap." That sharp, playful ribbing showed how close they'd become. They were rivals in the sense of pushing each other to be better, but friends in every way that mattered. On the field, Gibson's respect was earned through results. As a pitcher, Gibson's success depended on getting outs and staying calm under pressure. A shortstop's work can completely change a game's outcome. Gibson saw what Smith brought: rock, solid reliability, clutch defense, and the ability to erase mistakes with one smooth motion. Gibson demanded teammates who did their jobs without excuses. In his eyes, Smith was exactly that, dependable in ways that mattered more than flashy statistics. Away from baseball, their bond deepened into genuine loyalty. When Gibson's health began failing, Smith didn't make a big show of support. He simply called. He checked in regularly. Those weekly phone calls were quiet acts of caring, human connections that meant everything. When Gibson couldn't attend Lou Brock's funeral, he trusted Smith to speak for him. That level of trust spoke louder than any public tribute ever could. The relationship between Gibson and Smith proves a simple truth: greatness recognizes greatness. The most feared competitor in baseball could also be the most generous judge of another man's character. Gibson's admiration for Smith shows us that even intimidating legends can be moved by dedication, character, and quiet excellence. For Cardinals fans, this friendship represents something beautiful. Two Hall of Famers from different eras who found common ground in their shared commitment to winning and doing things the right way. So there you have it, Bob Gibson's 6 favorite baseball players. From Juan Marical's amazing pitching to Ozzie Smith's incredible defense, each of these players earned Gibson's respect in their own special way. What's really cool is how Gibson, one of the toughest competitors ever, picked these players not just because they were good, but because they were good people. Like when Curt Flood stood up for what was right, or when Lou Brock played his best in the biggest games. Gibson cared about having a good heart just as much as being skilled. These stories show us that baseball's best moments aren't just about numbers. They're about friendships between players who made each other better. If you like learning about these baseball heroes, hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome stories.